Welcome to another episode of I Am Tired of Church. Well, I want to speak about the Bible. First of all, I do think the Bible is an important book for us to read. I believe it's God's way of communicating with us to an extent. I think we have taken the Bible and have made it to be an idol. My question is, a lot of times, we always go back to the Bible for something. So I guess I asked the question as a way to entice you to think, what was it that the believers in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century had that we don't? Because they didn't have the Bible. So how is it that they maintain their strength in their faith? How is it that they continue to grow? See, these days we look at growth as, wow, you memorized that many verses? Or we somehow look up to a person who's able to memorize a whole chapter, let alone a whole book in the Bible. That wasn't important to them. We have taken that and have created an idol out of the Bible. I'm not saying don't read it, you don't need it, throw it out. No, I'm not saying that. But is your faith based and focused on the Bible? It's easy to blur that line between faith and the Bible. Faith in God and faith in the Bible. Because if you think, in the New Testament, back when they first began, they didn't have what we have. They didn't have a book all with a hardcover and a title and chapters and verses. So how is it that they knew certain things? How is it that they grew in faith? So Paul would write to the Romans, and those few believers there would read that letter. I doubt they made copies and at home they reread it and then they try to memorize it. That didn't happen. When he wrote to the Romans or to the Galatians, he didn't write about speaking in tongues to them. That was only to the Corinthians. So what happened to the rest? So we make a mistake of assuming we have to do everything that it says. That was written to the Romans, the book of Romans, for the Romans. Not for me. For the Romans at that time, in the situation they were living in. And then we have the Bible put together. First it was by chapters. That was like in the 1300s. And then in the 1500s, they added verses. So then we had chapter and verse. So now we'll take a verse and a chapter from the book of Romans, infuse it with a verse in the chapter of the book of Revelation, and then infuse that with the Old Testament. I'm thinking the law in Deuteronomy. And then we say, you see, that's why you have to give a tithe. What? That's akin to me taking the book Moby Dick with the Da Vinci Code and saying, you see, that's why it's going to rain tomorrow at 3 p.m. It doesn't make sense. You see, one thing in the Bible, in the New Testament, that Paul addressed in all his letters, love and grace. That was his foundation. That was his gospel to the non-believers, to those in every single church. When he addressed certain situations with one church, he wasn't addressing that with the other church. That other church didn't have that situation. The other church didn't say, hey, let's go get the book. Let's go get the letter he wrote to them and let's read that. And then divide the lines and say, okay, don't do this because it says that here. And remember the letter he wrote to way out there to Timothy? Well, remember that he wrote 10 years ago? Well, he wrote to us yesterday. Now it makes sense. No. Paul addressed and spoke about grace and love in all his letters. We can take the Bible and you can memorize it all day long. You can try to memorize it. You can read it 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day. Go ahead, highlight it, take notes. cut and paste the way you want to. But if you don't have love, you don't have grace and know how to live in God's grace and care for people, you can memorize it all day long. You can memorize the newspaper. It'll be the same exact thing. Paul addressed grace and peace, mercy. He spoke about God's love and God's forgiveness. He never addressed tithing. He never addressed hell, going to hell or you're going to burn. That wasn't even there. They didn't even think about that in those days. That wasn't even in their imagination, a God that would burn people. That's nowhere out there. But we like to take things and create things by cutting and paste. This is what we like. So we somehow get to a point when we worship the Bible. And the question I say, if tomorrow every Bible on earth, digital, media, video, every Bible that's out there disappears from the planet and you have no access to it, will you continue to grow in faith? Can you continue to grow in faith? If your answer is no, then your faith is dependent on the Bible and not on God's mercy and grace, God's accomplished work. When Christ said it is finished, it was finished. If you can't continue forward, then your faith is dependent on you having the Bible. And your faith, if it's on and in the Bible, will one day fail you. Because we're not supposed to have faith in the Bible. And if you have faith in the Bible and need to have it, that becomes idolatry. It's like a person who has a cross and has the cross and thinks that the cross is going to do something special. That is idolatry. Your heart and your faith is dependent on something besides God's accomplished work through Jesus Christ. So don't put your faith on the Bible. Yes, read it, study it. Yes, that's good. But don't put your faith on it and depend on your Bible. Because this is what happens when believers fall short, as they say. I don't know where that term came from, but let's just say they fall short. They somehow think, oh, if I start reading more, I'm going to draw closer to God. No, your faith is dependent again on an external source, the Bible. If you do something, God is going to react. No. God reacted already when Christ said it is finished. That is where it happened. It is finished for you. It is finished for me. We don't have to add to that. But we desire to add to that because it makes us feel like if I have something to do in this relationship with God. I have a part. I act, God reacts. If I act bad, God is going to react by abandoning me. If I get in the Word and read and study and pray all day, God is going to react and draw closer to me. You cannot put your faith in your actions. You cannot put your faith in the Bible. You need to put your faith on the accomplished work of Jesus Christ on the cross. That's where our faith lies. And it's not just on the cross. It's actually on the empty tomb. Because if you put your faith on the death of Christ, what good is that? If he didn't rise from the dead, our faith is on the empty tomb. That's what I depend on. When Christ said it is finished, those three words says, wow, my faith is sealed. He is the author of our faith. May God bless you, and don't ever forget that what Jesus Christ did is enough.